Welcome everybody. Hopefully you all had a chance to get some lunch. As I mentioned, this is Breakout Room C. I'd like to introduce you to Dave and Marisa, two of my favorite people in the world. And they're here to talk to you about unit economics and profitability. And with that, I'll turn it over to you all.
Awesome. Thank you,
Thanks.
Baz. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everyone enjoyed lunch. It's nice to see you all here in sunny San Diego. My name is Marisa Banigan. I am the Senior Director of Product Marketing at Apptio, and I'm thrilled to be joined by David Van Hoven, Senior DevOps Manager at Here Technologies. David, I will toss it to you first to talk a little bit about Here Technologies and what you guys do.
Great, thank you. So Here is the world's leading location data and technology platform. We have plenty of accurate and fresh map content, very customizable map. We're really serious about secure data exchange and personal data privacy. Taking a look at some of the numbers, we've been in the business for 35 plus years making maps. We have a very robust developer community, and the scale that we're at right now is hundreds of billions of API calls every month. So that puts us in as a top 100 AWS customer and also a top 25 strategic customer with them.
Impressive.
And taking a look at some of the logos that we have here, 1,000 plus unique enterprise customers. We have many, many owners actually, from BMW to Mitsubishi. We're primarily a B2B company. Chances are we've touched your life in the past 14 days and you didn't even realize it. We work with some of the largest e-commerce providers. Probably if you take out your phone, you're going to end up finding our maps there. We're involved in navigation, government, mobile, traffic, location services.
Awesome. Thanks, David. For those of you that don't know about Apptio, Apptio is the leading technology spend and value management company. Our solutions support technology business management, FinOps, and agile practices. And our FinOps solution, Cloudability, is a leading cloud cost management and optimization tool set that helps practitioners to manage, allocate, and optimize their cloud spend and tie every dollar spent within their cloud program to business value. So that leads us right to our topic. I think that if you were present for the keynotes this morning, you heard overwhelmingly that 2023 is the year of value for FinOps. Whereas a few years ago, we were really, up here talking about getting to the cloud as fast as possible. And then once you were there, getting your arms around your cloud spend and managing it effectively. What we're seeing today is practitioners, being asked to show how they are optimizing their spend, how efficiently they're spending, and how their cloud spend drives ROI for their organization. And today, David and I intend to cover 3 key metrics that help with just that. Measuring cloud program TCO, measuring your cloud program efficiency, and then driving to unit economics. So I want to start first with the concept of metric-driven cost optimization. This is a concept that the FinOps Foundation has tons of information about on their website if you want to check it out. But essentially, one key method to maximizing the value of your cloud spend is through metric-driven cost optimization, or MDCO, if you like to shorten things. MDCO is the driver that measures potential optimizations and then uses goals and target lines to trigger a right-sizing action, whether through your team members actioning upon it or through automation. So one example of MDCO is by measuring cloud cost efficiency and the impact of optimization efforts. So this first metric is really a way to surface indicators of waste. There's, the idea that every minute in the cloud matters from a cost perspective. And as a result, obviously you can realize savings or impact from right-sizing actions very, very quickly. But on the flip side of that, any kind of wasteful spend and overspend associated with that waste can also mount very quickly. So efficiency KPIs can help show you where that wasteful spend is happening and spur right-sizing action within your team. We think about setting optimization metrics in 2 categories. First, by looking at the rates that you are paying to cloud providers, and second, by looking at your cloud usage overall. So when it comes to rates, I think it's no surprise to anyone in this room that leveraging commitment instruments, things like RIs, savings plans, CUDs, for example, is one of the top ways to ensure that you are getting the best rates from your cloud providers. But how can you tell if you're actually maximizing the value of leveraging these types of instruments? Well, with clear measurements to both look at your overall coverage and your utilization, you can begin to articulate that for stakeholders within your organization. What we see is that when you look at coverage, most times Apptio customers will set a target of 70 to 80% for their coverage rate, which essentially means that 70 to 80% of your overall cloud spend is captured within one of these commitment programs, and only 20 to 30% falls outside and are purchases made on demand at higher cloud prices. When you look at utilization, most times our customers are actually setting a target of getting as close to 100% utilization as possible. This means that you are leveraging the full span of your commitment program, and none of that is going unused, which obviously helps to drive the efficiency of your spend. One interesting aspect is, I think, everyone kind of talks about the uncertainty in the marketplace and our macroeconomic uncertainty. But what we have found is that practitioners aren't going in and redefining their KPIs as a result of shifting economic conditions. What they're actually doing is looking at their existing KPIs and figuring out how to shift those numbers a bit to get more efficient spend. So rather than 70 to 80% coverage, for example, they're driving more towards 90% coverage to ensure that even more of their total cloud spend is captured as part of these commitment programs. So David, I will turn it over to you next. You guys at Here Technologies leverage a lot of different efficiency and optimization metrics, so I'll let you talk about your use case as well.
Great, thanks. So for us at Here Technologies, optimization really is a two-way street, right? Traditional operational expense is nothing unique to the cloud. This is just how OpEx works, really. So where finance is focusing on the dollars, we find a more valuable relationship with the engineers when we discuss optimization without bringing up the money. So having conversations about having CPU or memory or taking a look at the unique use cases for IOPS, that kind of results in an impact on spending when we approach it that way. We started off, we blended this into a starting point for us. We called it our utilization cocktail, right? So take 1/2 CPU, add 1/3 memory, throw in a few parts IOPS, and you've got your solution here. These are obvious things that for engineers to take a look at, these technical metrics, and the finance folks tend to just continue to focus on that price times quantity. But ultimately, this just stages us up for utilization best practice standard. And for us, it utilizes the AWS right-sizing standard, but it should be applicable for other virtualization or cloud service providers. So the big picture for our cloud purchase policies. So to operate at the speed of innovation, engineers have the rights to buy things through a portal, right? If you compare that to your kids, it would be like giving them teenager access to Amazon and then setting a budget for them. Not really the case for corporate citizens. We say things a lot of times like spend it like it's yours. Unless you're Vaz, you're probably not spending tens of thousands of dollars every month. Nobody's out buying a brand new Ferrari every day, but sometimes in the cloud, we actually spin something up like that, right? So this approach here is an aspirational look of how we want to kind of look at that cloud governing policy. It's based on our kind of house of policies that's approved through our policy committee, like the way that we look at things like mobile phones and laptops. So the intent is to take a similar approach here with our cloud at the point when teams kind of are onboarded. We start to collect that metadata. We want to know who are you, what business unit are you with, why do you want to have access to this cloud, and do you have a budget? A lot of times that sends people right back to the start again because they can't even answer that simple question. But the intent here is to kind of take that similar approach and then ask, what's your policy going to be? For us, we decided on a 2 times capacity required. So we either use a calculator to start off or a set best fit based on trending data, plan for time-based approach. But the point here is to try and discuss this on paper before the spending actually happens. And then we can have those architecture and performance conversations. And then from there, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
2 little pieces in there. From there, we've set ourselves a baseline, right? Then we can do our measurement through the Cloudability tool. We can check our actuals. We can report that back to our business units through dashboards and reports. And then we have levers that we can pull, right? We have custodian actions. We have budget policies through IAM. And then one other piece of this is we just want to make sure that we're communicating with our engineers. We want to allow that alerting to occur. That allows them to then leverage this for building services out and then also giving them the opportunity to automate where possible. And so like any good policy, you want to have a good framework around it, and you want to have regular reviews. We don't want to leave it just up to our engineers to take a look at their Cloudability dashboard and say everything's fine. Sorry, that's not going to work. Our business leaders want to know about budget alignment, right? And our corporate leaders want to know, how are things trending through the end of the year? Are we on plan or off plan? Add into that finance throwing credits at you and other things. So we implement a change process in there as well. And then these are just things like telling folks to document your code. It's just good practice for us. So we just say, review, be ready for change, and then look for constant improvement. So taking a look at our automation story, not every app is equal when it's running in the cloud. I'm sure everyone here knows that. Our central ops team that I run, we develop what we call menu items. These are automation for the business units to choose from. We have regular releases that we run out on GitLab. We have comms to inform our community about these changes. We have robust Confluence pages with the details of the automation, what's being assessed, what's the action, what are the expectations for the teams. We also tag all of an assessment on every single one of our EC2 instances out there. And we put links back to those Confluence pages so people can understand what we expect from you directly off of that tag. We're set up so that business units can opt into these actions. So they can select from that menu. But we do allow the teams themselves to opt out. This is our be nice strategy, right? The engineers can then say, this isn't going to work for us, because they know better than we do where those dependencies lie, right? And then it allows us the opportunity to direct our architecture community to go have that review with those teams. Where we've got these Oracle and Java developers, they probably aren't going to go dig into the operating system. The engineers may not want to implement those kinds of changes like we're requesting. So architecture kind of bridges that fear of action gap. And then we tend to lean towards going the opt-out route for everything. Teams can opt out as they see fit, but then that allows the architects to come in and work on coordinating and implementing the change as needed. And then finally, we can just move these metrics up and down as we see fit. So we started off with a less than 10% CPU max with some action. That kind of got us our quick wins. And then we scale it up to a new level of standard requirements. But that's adjustable for whatever your use case happens to be.
Awesome. Thank you, David. So now that we have metrics in place to measure the efficiency and optimization of costs found within our cloud provider bills, I want to also extend that out to measure our cloud program ROI. It's important to remember that the monthly invoice that you receive from your cloud providers really only tells part of your total cloud cost story. Some common costs that fall outside of those bills could be fees for observability or security tools, charges for third-party applications that help you manage your cloud environment, like Cloudability, for example. And finally, depending on your footprint and ecosystem, it could include additional cloud providers. It could include labor. Maybe your FinOps team falls within that category. And you want to be sure to be able to connect those costs to get a full readout on your cloud TCO. So to measure cloud program TCO, you need to be able to connect those direct and indirect or shared costs together, and then subsequently you can allocate them back to the business more fully. This measurement really helps both the cloud practitioners and cloud users to understand when your rising cloud costs correlate to investment in growth and innovation, or when there are efficiencies that need to be addressed. What we've seen at Apptio is our customers leverage cloud program TCO really to enable that advanced cost allocation or full chargeback back to the business by team, by product, by application, however they're organized, which helps to make teams more accountable for their spend and can highlight those key inefficiencies for teams to focus in on and address. David, I know at Here Technologies, you guys leverage cloud program TCO as a key metric to track with your cloud program as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So at here, we have a few finance controls in place. And because my team maintains root control over our cloud presence, we utilize organization service control policies and the OU structure so that we can categorize our various account types. So we use cloud, R&D, and production accounts. That gives us a finer grain of control over our rolling out our changes, implementing our policies, and applying our automation. And then we ingest our account structure monthly from our finance team, and that allows us to organize our reporting and our tooling so that we can roll it by business unit, subunit. And then that helps us with building our budgets, forecasting, grouping account, reporting. Our finance actually handles the cost allocation through the Cloudability tool. They're all well-versed in how to build reports and share those reports, and that's key for us. They speak the same language, and everyone's using the same tooling. We manage the purchasing of what we call our micro commitments. That's our RIs and savings plans in our cloud center of practice. And that allows us to push that vacancy back proportionally to anyone who received a benefit over the previous month. So that approach allows our cost center to remain net zero. So every month I'm not making money and I'm not losing money. I cross-charge out 100% of all of my usage, my upfront fees, and my vacancy. And then at our scale, we also have gone through some negotiated discount on individual services with our cloud providers. It just has a little bit of a catch there in that we have to kind of coordinate those actions with some of our key teams who are our biggest consumers. We just are looking for them to kind of commit to what their usage and their growth intends to be over the term.
Awesome. Thanks, David. You make it sound so easy.
Yeah.
This brings us to our third and final FinOps metric that we wanted to review with you today, the unit cost metric. The point of unit cost metrics is to understand your cloud costs in the context of the specific business value that they are delivering. So you can measure, for example, your cloud cost to power 1,000 website visits, or your cloud cost associated with every dollar of sales revenue generated. And it really builds upon the efficiency and optimization and cloud program TCO concepts that we just covered. I love unit cost metrics personally because, yes, I'm a bit of a nerd, but also because everyone gets them. Every stakeholder can understand them. They're in plain language, and they reconcile a lot of that complexity that comes along with talking through cloud charges like your price, your usage, your demand. It instead just brings a focus onto the business value delivered, the cost per X. And it clarifies the cloud cost component in your margin analysis as well. So one example I can share is actually specific to Apptio and our team. So as you probably have gathered or may be familiar with our tool, one of the critical components of Cloudability is the ability to bring in and process billing lines. And supporting some of the largest cloud consumers out there, we process a lot of billing lines. So our cloud FinOps team naturally looks at the cost per billing line processed as one of the key metrics that they track. You'll see some charts up here. I know some of our execs are in the background. These numbers have all been anonymized, but are still directionally correct. So you'll see from the bottom chart, the blue chart, the number of billing lines processed over the course of a year increased dramatically by almost double what they were at the start of the year. And overall cloud costs, therefore, to process those billing lines also increased. But by measuring our unit cost, the chart all the way to the right, you can see our unit cost actually dropped pretty dramatically over that same time period by 75%. This was because our team was taking optimization actions at the same time, and were readily able to then show our stakeholders and our leadership team, even though overall costs may be rising, our unit costs are actually dramatically dropping, meaning we're spending them more efficiently, and the cost growth that we're experiencing is also associated with our business growth. So great example of how our FinOps team does it at Apptio. I know at Here Technologies, you guys look at unit costs pretty closely as well. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yep, for sure we do. So in our culture, our engineers tended not to focus on cost and cost ownership because they got approval for that budget. So they went about their business, built their environments, and then we came along and said, hey, you're spending too much. And they said, wait, this is crazy. I'm approved. What's the problem here, right? So what we try to do as an organization is we work on utilization as well as a cost per million API calls metric. And that drives KPIs, ratings for the engineers. This avoids us having that kind of direct dollar conversation with the engineers. So the way that we kind of think of it is if we were to say, you need to go out and save $1 million, you might do things like, I'm not going to order out any more takeout, or I'm going to stop driving my car and start walking, right? I'm going to turn off all the heat in my house. These aren't necessarily sustainable ways for you to continue on. But if we say something like, we need you to lower your CPM by 10%, then you start to take a look at the architecture, right? You start to look and see, where are the options and opportunities for you to make that change, because there's a direct correlation to demand and utilization against your full architecture. So we kind of look at it as a different perspective to get the same result. And it can take different forms, right? Maybe it's moving to Graviton. Maybe it's looking at spot pricing for some of your workloads. Maybe it's right-sizing against our 2040 standard. But what we're doing is asking folks to talk about their cloud configuration with us, right? And the benefit is that we spend the correct amount of money. There's an opportunity and a possibility, really, that we might spend more than what we had planned. But if we have the correct workload sizing there, then it allows us to have that conversation with the business. Is this a correct usage for this? Is the code correct, right? Is this service, does it make sense? Are we charging correctly? We've got the customers and we're sized appropriately or utilized appropriately, but we can have those valuable conversations at that point.
Awesome. And then once you have established some unit costing that you're tracking, you can start to develop then into unit economics, which I think is a huge topic today. You saw it all over the keynotes this morning. It's interesting, when the first Cloud FinOps book was published, unit economics was called the nirvana of FinOps, and it made it seem like it was, kind of this state that you'd never really achieve, but you always aspire to get there, and only the runners or even flyers in FinOps would ever really achieve it. But in the second edition, for those of you that have read it, they actually have repositioned unit economics to one of the most important concepts in FinOps today. And it's because it directly supports all of its principles. And we at Apptio definitely see a lot of practitioners starting to build unit economics or prepare for it much earlier on in establishing their FinOps practice than even they did 4 years ago. So essentially, unit economics is calculating the difference between your unit cost or your marginal cost and your unit revenue or marginal revenue, which helps you find the break-even point so that you can start to see where you will start to generate a profit. And this is a key way to communicate both cost and value and drive data-driven decisions through your cloud program investments. So I'll give you another Apptio example for how we leverage cloud unit economics. So essentially, I showed you some of the unit cost metrics that our team pulls together on the FinOps team. They then work hand in hand with our finance team to start to layer in some of our revenue data and look at product profitability. This helps to drive key investment decisions across our product portfolio and gives us the ability to measure things like the performance of an existing product or forecasting the performance of a new product we might be thinking about introducing. It helps us identify key levers that we can pull to optimize overall performance and costs. And it helps us determine where we should be investing more or perhaps even pulling back investment to really maximize our profits at the end of the day. This is a build. There we go. So unit economics has been identified by cloud experts as a critical measurement to translate cloud costs into the value that they produce for an organization, but it takes time to get there. As you can see here, a very small portion of FinOps practitioners actually say that they're able to fully do unit economics today. So if you're just getting started, don't feel poorly. I would take the advice of some of the keynote speakers today. Just start slowly, start somewhere, and celebrate successes along the way. We actually find that many times practitioners could be running in one capability of FinOps, but perhaps crawling in another. David, I know that that's kind of the case for you guys at Here Technologies. Can you talk about how you think about where to invest and mature within your FinOps practice?
Yeah. Sorry, there we go. Yeah, for us, you need to weigh what works best for you. You heard Natalie say this morning, right? That you can step back. For us, we implemented serverless in our automation because it made a lot of sense for us until it didn't make sense. We had billions of instantiations running out there that became really overwhelming. We found out years ago that that was really costly, not only in money, but in management. Change was really, really difficult for that. So we took a step back and we moved to a single EC2 instance that runs our automation in every account. It builds itself, it runs, and it destroys itself every 30 minutes, which is also great for a DR test for my
For
folks.
sure.
But the point is that you don't always have to be running to satisfy the requirement, right? Like any good service, you find the cost against security, against performance, and then that determines the benefit.
Awesome. And there's lots of support and resources out there for you guys to just help get started. This is one example specific to unit economics published by the FinOps Foundation, just giving you an idea of what are the different things that you could be considering during each of the different stages. So there's certainly, a lot of support for you along your journey. So just to quickly wrap, 2023 is the year of value. I hope some of the use cases that we shared today, some of the tooling that you saw up on the screen, and some of the metrics that we shared will help each and every one of you continue pushing the boundaries of FinOps and advancing your FinOps practices. I did mention a couple of websites and things like that throughout the presentation, but we're here to help. There's the Cloud FinOps book. If you're just getting started, it's clearly a great foundation. I'm sure many of you have checked that out. But we also have a couple of live streams that we produce at Apptio. First is FinOps Fridays with Nathan Besh. Be careful, you might get an assignment from JR apparently if you're on there and pushing the boundaries of FinOps there, as Udom experienced. We also have Cloud Busters run by Mallory Boudreau. So essentially all of these live streams, we get some FinOps experts on and talk about a critical topic within the marketplace and advancing practices. There's lots of blogs, there's lots of webinars, and please feel free to stop by the Cloudability booth if you want any more information or like a product demo or want to discuss any recent news that you may or may not have heard about us this week. So with that, we will take some questions. And don't worry, I'm giving all the hard ones to David, so feel free to ask away.
Awesome. Thanks, David and Marisa. That was a great talk. I really appreciated the examples of unit economics too, because as Marisa said, sometimes it's hard to know where to start.
Yeah.
So let's open it up to questions and just hold your hand up and I'll run over with Mike. Any questions from the audience?
I have a couple of questions. One is cloud purchase policy key elements. You said you will review with upper management cloud purchase policy weekly. Is that too rush, too quick? Generally, the cloud purchase policies will be per quarterly. Is it weekly, too rush? It's based on business policy.
It's based on business policy. The point I think on that slide is just to ensure that we're having those regular reviews to, with our kind of key stakeholders.
Okay, the next question is about marginal cost versus marginal revenue. I know marginal cost is directly you're adding up the cost from all the cloud providers, you get it. Marginal revenue is based on the unit metrics. So can you explain marginal revenue a little bit, because it's hard to understand marginal revenue based on unit metrics?
I'm going to pin that one and talk to you afterwards because I don't think that I can do it justice in the quick 30-second blurb here, but grab me afterwards. I'm happy to have the conversation.
Yeah, actually, David and Marisa will be available after for more questions.
Thank you. Question for you, David. How involved are you in architectural decisions or product decisions? So for example, I think you mentioned moving to Graviton. What is your role if, say, you want to migrate to a new processor, or if you want to go RDS versus Aurora, or make those kinds of decisions? Is this something you will actually drive with the engineering teams or recommend? Like, what kind of role do you take in those sorts of decisions?
Good, that's a good question, thanks. We take the recommendations that we have from industry tools like Cloudability, we take them right from the native tools themselves to see where the opportunity may lie, to find the cost savings. But it's up to the teams then to work with the architects themselves. Mm-hmm. So we surface the opportunity and highlight that. We'll tag it, identify that there's a chance for them to go in and make these kinds of changes. But that conversation happens. We have a pool of architects that are out there that the teams can work with. They will kind of jump from team to team to assist them with those decisions.
Got a question from the center here.
Yeah, Marissa, I'm curious to understand from a cloudability perspective, like a lot of what you showed was very kind of manual oriented. What are the capabilities around the product for automating? Like for an example, you're giving recommendations, you've got it's a production environment, you have change management processes, hooks to get approvals, all that kind of stuff. How does that, like, you have those capabilities within the product?
So we do have automation capabilities within the product where you can set levers and targets around some of the actions that you're taking. We actually just invested into automation quite heavily this year, though. We introduced Cloudability Savings Automation, which is meant to automate your commitment program purchases as well and allow you to get higher savings as part of that. Make sure that, I talked about that 70 to 80% coverage, going up to 90, making sure that you're even above 90% coverage with those and staying at 100% utilization. So it is certainly an area where we have capabilities. You're sitting actually next to a couple of product folks that can give you more detail, but it's an area where we're investing quite heavily as well for the future.
Any other questions? Hands? Over here.
I was just curious where you guys were at with incorporating licensing into your unit economics metrics, like software licensing costs, SQL Server, Oracle, that sort of thing, into those unit cost metrics.
Yeah, I'll let you go first.
I think that's something that we're going to be looking at later
Yeah.
this year as we start to incorporate in, especially with the BI kind of enhancements that are coming for the cloudability tools. So we're not quite there yet, but that's an aspiration that we have to be included with that later this year.
Yeah, it's the same for us at Apptio too. It's an area that we're developing into and maturing as well to be able to capture at that level of granularity within our unit costing.
Any other questions? Yeah, over here.
So this is for Apptio. So how Cloudability integrated with the Apptio product set?
So
The core, the parent one.
Yep. So like I mentioned at the start, our portfolio spans solutions that support technology business management. Technology business management has always incorporated cloud costs, and our products reflect that. Where we see the interplay and where the products really help to support each other and the disciplines help to converge is by leveraging FinOps and leveraging Cloudability. You're really able to optimize those costs more effectively and plug in the optimized cloud costs within the core product set instead. So that's where we see some of the interplay.
Any other questions? I think we have time for maybe one more.
We can connect after that as well.
Here.
Thanks for the presentation, everybody. So I did have one question for you, David. On your topic of unit economics and unit costs, what is the strategy you employ to go and get motivation and prioritization from the engineering teams to surface that data that you need to create those unit costs that are application specific? It's one thing, when you're going with a cost optimization number, or you're going with a cost anomaly, you can associate the win easier. How do you do that with the unit cost and surfacing that data?
So we actually use that cost per million API as a KPI internally for the team. So that's what they're being measured on, comparing themselves with, and that's just become kind of a fluent conversation internally for all of the teams to kind of have that discussion. This is what my CPM is, and it's just a common conversation in there. So that's the KPI that's generated as a result of using CPM as our metric.
All right, thanks, David. Thanks, Marisa. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thanks for watching that session. I'm sitting here in San Diego right after FinOps X. We hope you join us next year here live 2024. In the meantime, please subscribe to the channel and join the community. Get involved, join the summits, get in a working group, and don't forget to get FinOps certified. Because next year here in San Diego for FinOps X, it's going to be twice as big. Come join the party. Come meet your people. Welcome home.